Oh, is it Dylan tonight? Oh man, Dylan, I like picking on Sarah more, so let's just blame it on her, okay? Yeah, much easier to pick on. I feel like I've picked on Sarah since I've been here. I have, I think. You can take, that's good. It is really good to see everybody that's out tonight. I know I was thinking about it, we've still got quite a number up at camp right now. And it's been, I think, a good camp season. I did want to say how much I appreciate all of those who supported the camp in whatever way. A lot of people supported it financially, and that's huge. A lot of people went in person and participated in a lot of the week. A lot of people from here. Mark was so glad to be back, weren't you, Mark? Yeah, he was glad to be back. Even the day he got stuck in Buckley when his starter went out, he was still glad to be back. Me and him sit at the Sheets. We hung out at the Sheets for a while waiting on a tow truck. But anyway, it's been a really good thing. I know we've got a number up still this week, but really appreciate that, and I think it's a good work. I got some papers to pass out tonight. Noah's already coming up, and Braden's coming up. Mark's old and retired from this kind of work, boys. So thank you, fellas. He put his time in. All right, so we're going to be in Luke the 6th chapter, and I think we're going to probably get through it. I didn't nitpick everything. I do want to remind you, we talked last week and we slowed down because I felt like and based on your comments, I feel like that was correct. A lot of people want to talk about fasting. It's one of those intriguing things in Scripture. I'm not going to go back into it. My only reason for referencing it at all is because as Luke uses these controversies, he's using them to build this to something. And you need to kind of be aware of that. He doesn't accidentally place his material the way that he places it. If you go through the Gospels, you'll notice that there is some difference of order in Matthew and Mark and Luke. And what you have to acknowledge there is none of them are trying to lie to you, all right? But they're less concerned at points about specific chronology and more concerned about how they're packaging some of the events of the life of Jesus and some of his teachings to help push a particular idea to their audience. Does that make sense? And each writer is very unique in that, in their intent. And you can't deny that, because if you try to deny that and say, no, every one of them is perfectly laid out chronologically, well, then somebody's wrong, because they don't match everything up. Does that make sense what I'm saying? And they never claim to do that. They do give an orderly account or a good account, but their order sometimes is based on, as they try to arrange the material to say, hey, this teaching fit really well with this incident. And the other thing to keep in mind is this. Do you think Jesus repeated a lot of the same stuff in his teaching because he was around different people? Yeah, so maybe Luke says, well, he did talk about this time too. He talked about it another time, but he talked about it here, and that's what I want to highlight right here whenever he was dealing with these run-ins with the Pharisees, okay? So keep all that in mind as you go about it. I love the way we have these somewhat individual accounts of the life of Jesus, because when they all come together, there's a reason there are 4 Gospels, all right? And it's not to present the exact same material from the life of Jesus every time. There's a lot of overlap, but there's certain things each writer was interested in highlighting. I believe fully under the inspiration of the Spirit. But I also believe that these men had their own situations and settings and personalities, God-given ability. What did God do when they were trying to build the tabernacle? Did he just say good luck? What did he give them, Andy? He gave them their spirit, didn't he? Remember? He filled them with his spirit so they would be effective and efficient at what they did. In Luke chapter 6, we've got this buildup of controversy followed by a really important teaching. And it's a much shorter version than what we call the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew, but there's a lot of similar material. Quite possibly it was a similar sermon delivered at a different place. But anyway, let's start off here and just read 1 through 17 to get our feet wet. And I want you to kind of follow the controversy build up and think about what's being communicated. So keep in mind, the Pharisees had just criticized Jesus about eating and fasting. And he said, your guys never fast, Jesus. What's with that? And what did Jesus reply to that, by the way? You remember? Yeah, well, listen, right now the bridegroom, there's a party. The bridegroom's here. We're going to eat. But he says when the bridegroom's taken away, they're going to fast. And then he gives this really important piece at the end here talking about you don't put new wine in old wineskins. Or you don't put a new patch on an old garment. New wine goes in fresh wineskins. And anyway, that's important lead up here. So it says on chapter 6, verse 1, on a Sabbath, while he was going through the grain fields, his disciples plucked and ate some heads of grain, rubbing them together in their hands. Why does Luke give us so much detail here? You wonder that? Well, it's the Sabbath. Why this? They pluck it, they rub them together to crack them open, to get to the actual grain, right? Why does he give us all that detail? Or it's identifying at least what the Pharisees would say is work, right? It's identifying what the Pharisees would call that actual threshing, right? They're actually separating the wheat from the... Yeah. Some would. Some would even go that far, depending on which group you're dealing with. So he's emphasizing these things so you have an idea of what's going to set the Pharisees off. Not that they're correct, but you have an understanding. So it says some of the Pharisees said, why are you doing what is not lawful to do on the Sabbath? According to who? You should ask that question. Have you read through the Old Testament and seen anything about the Sabbath forbidding to pluck grain and eat it if you're hungry? I haven't. And Jesus answered them, have you not read what David did when he was hungry, he and those who were with him, how he entered the house of God, and he took and ate the bread of the presence, which is not lawful for any but the priests to eat, and gave it also to those who were with him. And he said to them, the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath. Now on another Sabbath day, he entered the synagogue and was teaching. And a man was there whose right hand was withered. And the scribes and the Pharisees watched him to see whether he would heal on the Sabbath, that they might find a reason to accuse him. By the way, what passage forbids healing on the Sabbath? What, was healing such a common occurrence that they had to make a law against it? Man, all these people going around healing people on the Sabbath. We got to put a stop to that. So clearly, you have to think they're actually watching him, anticipating him doing something good to alleviate suffering, and none of that matters. They're just trying to say, we can get on to him. That's crazy. It's absolutely crazy when you think about it. So he knew their thoughts, and he said to the man with the withered hand, come and stand here. And he rose and stood there. And Jesus said to them, I ask you, is it lawful on the Sabbath to do good or to do harm, to save life or to destroy it? And after looking around at them all, he said to him, stretch out your hand. And he did so, and his hand was restored. But they were filled with fury and discussed with one another what they might do to Jesus. Now in these days he went out to the mountain to pray, and all night he continued in prayer to God. And when he came, he called his disciples and chose from them 12, whom he named apostles. Simon, whom he named Peter, and Andrew his brother, and James and John, and Philip and Bartholomew, and Matthew and Thomas, and James the son of Alphaeus, and Simon, who was called the Zealot, and Judas the son of James, and Judas Iscariot, who became a traitor. It's kind of an interesting place, isn't it, to stick the calling of the apostles in, don't you think? Like, why does Luke put that there? Just chew on it. All right. So Luke 6 opens with an episode that builds off the previous controversy. The Pharisees already challenged Jesus about fasting. Now they pick at strict what keeping? Sabbath keeping. Yeah, plucking grain to satiate hunger was not wrong according to the Torah. But the Pharisees had their own oral law. And that is what they felt like was being violated. As a matter of fact, the only reference at all to plucking grain anywhere is in Deuteronomy 23 something or another. And it says you're allowed it, not on the Sabbath, but it says you're allowed to pluck grain from your neighbor's field if you're hungry. You just can't do what? You just can't like get a big sickle and start going through there. Or you can even pluck grapes, it says, if you're hungry. You can eat your fill, but what you can't do is fill a bag to take home, right? If there is an immediate need, the indication is you're allowed to meet that need, even if it's not technically your stuff. A lot of times we'd call that stealing, wouldn't we? But in this case, God says, hey, if your neighbor has a bunch of grapes and you're hungry and you eat a few, isn't that a nice thing to do? All right. Jesus, interestingly, references an event from the life of who? Yeah, not just David. Let's give him his title. Who was David? King David. I think that's important here. So, in David's situation, the men were hungry. And it seems in this case that true need overrides ceremonial tradition. And I do wonder if the reason Jesus picks King David, did Jesus have any connection to King David? Just a little, huh? Yeah, he's in David's line. He's going to be the fulfillment of the covenant given in 2 Samuel 7, where you're basically told, David's told, hey, you got a guy that's going to be on the throne forever. And you're trying to figure that one out because you're like, well, it wasn't Solomon, right? His kingdom didn't last forever. So it had to be somebody else. It's Jesus that's going to fulfill all that. And I think it's interesting, too, I don't know that just anybody could have got away with going in the tabernacle and eating the bread of the presence. I think that would have probably been tough for most people to claim a right to do. David does it because he has been chosen to lead Israel at that time. Does that make sense? So it seems especially for him, there may be an allowance to not just disregard the law. We saw other kings that tried to do that, didn't win, it didn't go well. But his reasoning was based on the extreme need of their situation. They were starving, and he had to take care of these men. So it's an interesting comparison Jesus uses here. Well, obviously Saul would challenge him, and the priest could have. The priest could have. As a matter of fact, the priests take some heat over time, don't they, from Saul for kind of helping out David. So certainly Saul thought that the priest should have challenged him because David was not the accepted king in Israel at this time. Saul was still king. He was on the run. But certainly there was a knowledge and understanding that David was coming along. So the final statement is really big. Jesus declares the Son of Man is what of the Sabbath? He's Lord of the Sabbath. He's not denying the Sabbath. He's not denying its importance and significance, certainly in the life of Israel. That day of rest is significant for Israel. It's one of the more significant commands Israel was given. I don't know if it was in here or, I'll tell you what, maybe it was at Bell. I've talked too much lately. I start to forget who I said to what and when and where, okay? I think I was at Bell. I was talking about the Ten Commandments, and isn't it striking that out of all the Ten Commandments, what commandment gets the most airtime? It's the Sabbath. Go look at the amount of page space given to the Sabbath command in Exodus 20. It gets more attention than any other, which seems kind of weird to us. But when you've been slaves all your life and you believe that your value is based on what you produce and you think that's the way the world works, then how important is that command to rest and let God be God, to rest and trust in God? It was probably one of the harder things for Israel to break out of mentally. Maybe us too some days. All right. So the first controversy is quickly followed by a second. It's again the Sabbath day. It's another Sabbath. And Jesus is teaching where? He's teaching in the synagogue. And the Pharisees are so chained by their traditions that they would prefer someone continue to suffer rather than violate their view of what is right or correct on the Sabbath day, which is just astounding to me. And the part where Jesus actually engages them, do you read that and hear that? He asks them. He says, is it right to do good or do harm? To save a life or destroy it? And what do they say? They say nothing, just like you all. just like you all. They're just quiet. Like, I'm not answering that question. I mean, I've seen that with my kids sometimes, like when they just don't want to answer because they know the right answer, but they don't want to say the right. You know what I'm talking about? It's like, are you so stubborn and pig-headed that you're going to sit there and even pretend for a moment that the other answer is the right answer? And the Pharisees' answer is, yep, we are.
Yeah, he's not just contradicting them, he's contradicting the oral law.
The oral law, absolutely.
What the Pharisees say is every bit as legit as the written law. And so he's not just making a statement about the Sabbath day, he's saying that the oral law is incorrect.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the whole basis for the Pharisees' prestige and status.
Yep.
So if their oral law is not correct, well then why would anybody listen to Pharisees after that?
Strain out a gnat and gag on a camel, right? I mean, that's what it was. They got so wrapped up that they had missed. And it's amazing, too, especially when you go back and read the prophets. When you read the prophets, God had a lot of criticisms of Israel along very similar lines. You'll keep all these outward obvious traditions, and yet you neglect the weightier matters of the law. Love, justice, mercy, righteousness, the things that actually matter, the things that the law is supposed to reinforce. So, number 5, and I apologize, I've got a word I messed up here. The Pharisees are actually filled with what? Fury. That should be good. I was typing good and I left out an O. Sorry. At the good Jesus does. The coming of the kingdom always reveals hearts. The Pharisees ask things like, what are the rules? Jesus is more interested in what kind of kingdom has God created. What's he creating? What's he inviting people to? And that, by the way, is important because that's where Luke 6 is headed. In God's kingdom, people are fed. Bodies are restored. Mercy takes precedent over ritual precision. And the Son of Man has the authority to define what faithful living actually looks like. Now we've got the calling of the 12, and I didn't intend to get into this deeply. I know some people always want to debate around, hold on, this list and that list, and who's this. That's something you're welcome to do on time as you desire. But to me, the reason it comes here is because he is showing, and I'm careful with this, because Israel isn't bad. The Jews aren't bad, right? They did an amazing thing in maintaining so much of their identity until the time of Jesus with all the things they suffered. And they did an amazing thing in continuing to worship God. What would Jesus have done if he came into a world where the true God was totally forgotten already, right?
Scott, think about it. We have them as like for the oracles of God.
Yep.
The Word of God.
100%.
They're the ones who wrote it.
And preserved it.
Preserved.
Yep, absolutely. So I try to be careful. I'm not big on like just outright replacement theology, but there is an sense and an essence in which Jesus is kind of reconstituting Israel here. I think that's why the 12 are named here, because there's clearly a disconnect between particularly the leaders of Israel, the leaders of their religion, and what God is actually trying to do in the world. Now, that doesn't apply to all Pharisees either. I have no doubt there were some very genuine Pharisees, but the ones who are always chasing Jesus around and trying to stir the pot, those are the ones that we see in the Gospels, and they were problematic. They had lost sight of what it was about. So I think that's why Luke chooses to put this here. All right, any questions or comments up to that point? Okay, I like it. Cruising tonight. So somebody want to read, we'll not do all this at once because that's a big passage to read, but somebody want to read 17 down through 23, nice and, actually let's go through 26. 17 through 26, nice and loud. It's, 9 verses, not too bad. All right, this is a really interesting section. It doesn't get nearly as much attention as Matthew. I'm not sure why, but the first thing we have here in 17 through 19 is there's a huge crowd, and again, Luke is kind of showing the way this all sets. Like the Pharisees are just filled with fury. Oh, we can't stand this guy. He just keeps breaking our rules, and he doesn't support us, and he doesn't go along with what we want. But despite that, there's a huge crowd, and how are they reacting to Jesus? Everybody. And it's important. Luke emphasizes that, and that's the blank I have, I believe. They come to hear him and be healed of their diseases. They don't just come to be healed of their diseases. He is offering more than physical healing. A lot of people seem to approach God thinking, well, if he'll take care of my physical needs, we'll just be good. And that is, I'm sorry, not always the chief of God's concerns. And I've talked about this a lot, and I won't keep going through it. He does understand we have physical needs. And yes, those are real, and yes, those need to be dealt with. But a lot of times we want them dealt with in ways that are far beyond what is necessary because we have bought in to the world's messaging of scarcity. There's not enough. There's not enough glory. There's not enough fame. There's not enough attention. There's not enough money. I got to hoard. And I really think that this is kind of building here the kingdom identity, the status of the people who the kingdom of God is. It's more than open to. It's open to anyone who wants it. But it's really available and inviting to a group that is different than what you would normally think. In the Pharisees' world, for most of them, their position, what came along with that? Wealth. Power. All the things that man's kingdoms are built on. And they had kind of twisted it in the same type of kingdom. And so Jesus comes up with a very backwards message, doesn't he? You have something, Chuck? No, you're good.
I think additionally, if we're, some people say that Luke was a little more directed towards Gentiles, which means it was more directed towards people in the Roman Empire.
Mm-hmm.
And the doctrine of all the people that are taking advantage of you and are beating you down, they're going to get theirs. And the people that don't have much now that, adopt Christ are going to get their reward in the future. And he reiterates that point later on. It's Lazarus, the rich man,
Yeah.
in the book of Luke. So he comes back to that and re-emphasizes it over and over again. It really, first century Christianity really resonated with that idea. They liked the idea of the heaven and the hell.
Mm-hmm.
Not just for heaven, but also the idea, well, the people that get away with evil and that prosper from it, that they're going to get justice.
And I'm going to be honest with you. I've been working on this sermon for Sunday in Revelation, and I'm really liking the idea of hell right now too. Does that sound horrible? Just because some of the stuff that's been directing me to. When you talk about evil, I mean absolute evil in the world. There is some wickedness from which people have no desire to repent, and I don't like to deal with that a lot. I think we like the side of, God is wanting to save the lost and grace. I believe all that firmly. But there also comes a point where enough is enough, and evil will stand before God. And I agree. I mean, I don't know that we deal with that as much maybe in our culture at times. I feel like we're wealthier and we're comfortable, and we're a lot closer to the line of maybe sometimes being on the wrong side of those groups, aren't we? Yep. Well, and I go back to that scarcity abundance idea. There's a lot of the discussion at times in the Gospels of abundance that Jesus provides. And the understanding is God's abundance is so great, it will overshadow the scarcities of this world. And abundance frees us to things. If we really trust, my Father knows what I need, right? He's got tomorrow. And if that's the case, we are free to do things that are unorthodox. Like love or forgive and show grace and patience and all these things that are very difficult in a world of competition, scarcity. Protect yours, seek approval, get even, get payback. It's really interesting, the messaging, I guess, of this kingdom Jesus speaks of and offers.
In the world we live in, it's a dog eat dog type situation.
Yep.
But we like to do it.
Yep. And sometimes we're more in that game than we realize, aren't we? And I struggle with that.
Fringes sometimes.
Yep. We're yep.
We capitalize people. This one's not too bad. This is bad. So
Before I get carried away preaching here. So Luke's version of what we often call the Beatitudes reads very different from Matthew's. What do you notice about them? What stands out as you read Luke's? Any contrast you can think of with Matthew 5? Yeah, there's a lot of spiritualizing in Matthew, isn't there? And here, it's very physical, it's very practical, it's very down to earth, right? He says, blessed are the poor, blessed are you who are hungry. And now, what does Matthew say? You who hunger and thirst for righteousness. But he does that. He says, blessed are you who are hungry now, and those who weep now. And then when people hate you, revile you, exclude you, man, spurn your name as evil on account of who? The Son of Man. Not just, by the way, hey, people don't like me, that's my badge of honor. No, it says on account of the Son of Man. Like if you're gonna stand up for my kingdom, are we done? What? Huh? Are you kidding me? What do we do now? This isn't enough. No, it's not okay. I had more to get through. Take them back, teachers. Take them back. To be continued. Oh, man. I wasn't